Welcome to App Stories. Today's show is brought to you by Concepts and Fitbod. I am John Voorhees, and with me is my guest and co-conspirator, colleague, something. I don't know what you are, Alex. I've got Alex Guyot with me. Hey, Alex.
Hey, John. Good to be here with my co-conspirator, apparently.
Well, I feel like we conspire a little bit, especially when Federico's not around.
That's true.
I think it's only appropriate that we plot pranks because he likes to talk about the pranks that he plays most of his pranks on his poor mother, which, what's up with that? Mm-hmm. I'm sure she's been good to him. What's he doing? Pranking his mom. That's
Federico's poor mom.
He pranks me sometimes too, but I'm not his mom. He shouldn't do it to his mom.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it. I'll take it from him, but his mom shouldn't have to put up.
The team.
That's right. His mom shouldn't have to put up with this. Well,
we need to get in contact with his mom, and we can bring her into our co-conspiratorship, and then we'll all be conspiring against him.
There's a good idea. It's going to take a little while. I'm going to have to brush up on my Italian first because my Italian is pretty weak at the moment. Well, Alex, before we got started today on the main show, we talked a little bit about the tech that Alex is using to plan his wedding, because Alex is getting married later this year. And that was kind of interesting because I'll tell you, Alex, it's been a really long time since I got married. And I don't think they even had technology when I got married. So it was very much a lick stamp sort of thing when you were sending out invitations when I was getting married. But we talked a little bit about that. And we also talked about app and game preservation, which is a topic near and dear to my heart. And I know Federico's, he's not here, but, we talked about it a little bit on his behalf because, we had the 15th anniversary of the App Store this past week. And we wanted to talk a little bit about what I think is a pretty important topic. And if you want to join in on all the great conversations we have on App Stories Plus, you can join by going to appstories.plus or become a Club Premier member by going to plus.club. Those are the two ways you can get App Stories Plus, which is an extended early release version of the show with no ads. And while subscribing to App Stories Plus by itself is a great way to do that, the Club Premier plan for Club Mac Stories is really the best because not only do you get the show, but you get all the stuff we do on the club, whether it's the newsletters, the special podcast episodes, the special columns, the discounts, the Discord, all that stuff, all in one big package. And it's the best value, too, when you look at what things cost separately compared to Club Premier. So go check that out at plus.club or go on over to appstories.plus to subscribe that way. Alex, we have to talk about watchOS 10 because this is the biggest update to watchOS since the beginning of history, or at least since the beginning of the watch's history, I guess, at least according to Apple.
Mm-hmm. So Apple says.
They are very excited about it. And you know what? Look, let's give them some credit. It is pretty cool.
Yes.
I don't know if it's not, I wouldn't call it earth-shattering, but it is a pretty nice, I think it takes a little getting used to, but it's really grown on me. I've had it on my watch for about 3 weeks. What's your take on it?
Yeah, it's so, this was hyped up before WWDC as, a radical rethinking of the Apple Watch kind of. And Apple is also billing it as the biggest update since the introduction of the Apple Watch. And I was, at least during the announcement, I was thinking, is this really quite so big? But since I've been running the preview and have had it in my hands, the more I use it, the more I realize actually this is a pretty darn huge update to the Apple Watch operating system. And I still think there's a pretty good argument to be made that the early days of watchOS were making greater changes than these ones, especially if you count watchOS 2 as different from watchOS 1, since they completely restructured how third-party apps work. And in watchOS 3, they were dumping huge pieces of the system, dumping the Friends interface, dumping time travel, changing around how so many things work. They got rid of glances, that entire interface. I feel like there's a strong argument that watchOS 3 changed even more than this did. But that said, even watchOS 3 was 7 years ago. So this is certainly the biggest update since then. And I got to say, John, I really like it. I think they've done some phenomenal work here. I find myself more excited about the Apple Watch than I've been in quite some time now. I've been writing in my last few reviews at least. I've been reiterating this pattern that the Apple Watch has been in, where they just have, a series of health and fitness updates, a few tweaks to their first party apps, and maybe like one system feature. And that's about all that happens in these Apple Watch updates. And they've been boring, honestly.
Yeah, no, I hear you about that. There's no doubt about it. And I think, what they were doing for those years, really more than anything, and to my mind, is really leaning into the fitness aspect, because that obviously was, aside from notifications, what people basically told Apple through their, usage patterns was, we want this to be a really good fitness tracker. And that's what they've made it.
Right. Absolutely. It's a phenomenal fitness tracker. And I don't want to underplay the work that they've done in the last, several years of the Apple Watch, because the health features that they've brought have been awesome. The fitness features that they brought have been, also very good. But the thing with the fitness features in particular is that it seems like each year they target like a certain activity. Like they targeted swimming a few years ago. This year, I think, is cycling. One of the years was running. They did hiking. And it's not that they only do that, but it's like the large focus will be one of those. And if you don't do that specific activity, then one of the most major pieces of the annual watchOS update is completely meaningless to you, even though Apple did some amazing work, making that happen. So I don't want to, downplay how great the work that they've done is, but it hasn't been as widely appealing or exciting to all people who use the Apple Watch. If you don't do any of those types of workouts to the degree that that you would be tracking them on your Apple Watch. I mean, myself, for instance, I play rec league soccer every week. That is my main form of exercise, and I don't wear a watch when I'm doing that. So the fitness aspects of the Apple Watch I haven't really been able to use them at all, which is too bad. And I've tried to get into them to some degree, just to make sure that I'm aware of what's going on for my reviews. But in general, that aspect hasn't directly applied to me very much, and I'm sure that is the same for many Apple Watch users. So it hasn't been the most exciting for several years for everybody. Even if you are a swimmer or a runner, then you probably had a year at some point where you were like, oh yeah, new watchOS update, this is so great for me. But that year happened, and then we haven't heard anything about swimming, I don't think, for 4 years since then or whatever.
Right. Well, and the other thing is I think it's fair to say that maybe that they have started to run out of the popular sports to really add. Right. I mean, they've always had some obscure ones that have been added, but Apple's covered, as you said, swimming and biking and running and hiking and all of those things. And of course they added Fitness Plus, which added all sorts of, exercise classes. Once you get beyond those categories, I think that there's pretty big diminishing returns in terms of what you can still get and make the Apple Watch seem new and fresh. And so I think it really was time for a design refresh.
Yes, I totally agree. And yeah, I guess I should make sure we mention that the health features also have been phenomenal. And they've been doing, some really incredible work there. But similarly, most of those are, if you're not having that specific health problem, doesn't apply to you either. But still phenomenal work. But this year is so exciting to just see finally they're getting really back into making some changes to the actual operating system in a way that's going to impact how everybody uses it. And they're really positive. I think they've done some extremely cool things this year. And so, I mean, let's get into it here. But the first thing they've done is they've shifted up a bunch of the hardware buttons. Mm-hmm. So the Apple Watch dock that used to show up when you press the side button, that now triggers Control Center. So that comes in with the side button. The area that was, like ephemerally under the watch face that used to be Control Center, so you would swipe up to bring Control Center up, that is now this new interface called the Smart Stack. And you can access that. You can still access it by swiping up, but they also added, you can now turn the digital crown upwards and it will bring that Smart Stack interface up, which right. I really like that interaction, especially because, so the Smart Stack is this stack of widgets that show up that you can scroll through. And it's actually really nice to just be able to scroll the digital crown up and just keep scrolling it. And you bring up the interface and then you're immediately also scrolling the widgets. And you can it's just a really nice feeling to do it that way, and your finger is never like on the watch screen obscuring the stuff that you're trying to scroll through. You can just kind of sit on that digital crown and push it upwards. So that's really nice. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The Apple Watch dock then has been relegated to a double click of the digital crown. And that one, it seems like they're just kind of trying to dump. The dock it's not even named in various parts of their documentation anymore. They just call it a list of recently used apps. Right. And they got rid of the settings section in the watch app on iOS for the dock. So you used to be able to set it to, a list of manually selected apps. So if you wanted to say, oh, these are my top 10 apps that I use and I want them to be more easily available, you could put them in your dock. That setting no longer exists. So it's just double tap the digital crown and you'll get a list of your recently used apps. And that is the dock, and that's it. I don't even quite know why they're calling it a dock still. I feel like they should have just dropped the term entirely, because it's really more of a multitasking menu now. It's right. Much more like the iOS multitasking menu.
Right, because a dock, at least when you think of it on an iOS device or on a Mac or whatever, it's a place where you intentionally put things that you want to have easy access to. And that's not true anymore. Instead, it seems to me what Apple is really pushing for that sort of thing that you want to really make sure you have close at hand is pinning those widgets in that.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, which is nice. I've been doing that. I at first I didn't. I was just kind of seeing how the system worked and seeing what was suggested to me. And one that's kind of funny that's suggested to me all the time, Alex, I don't know what the deal is here, but one is when the sun is going to set, which is fine. I mean, it's good to know when it's going to get dark out, but it's not for where I live. It's for Cupertino. So it's not super helpful. And I wonder, I mean, I don't know if that was, I mean, I didn't have watchOS 10 on my Apple Watch when I was at WWDC. So I'm not sure why it's doing that. And everything is set to the Eastern time zone otherwise. And obviously my location is not in California, but I don't know. I mean, it's still early in the beta period. But yeah, I really like that interaction with the new Smart Stack.
Yeah, well, and people who have been watching or using watchOS significantly for a long time are going to remember the old Siri watch face. Some people might even still be using the Siri watch face. And everybody, I talked about that in my review that year, and I feel like most people also sang pretty positive praises of the Siri watch face, but it still had some problems in that you couldn't pin any of the, I don't think they called them widgets. I think they just called them like cards that would show up that would, be it was a machine learning based stack of cards that would display the content that you wanted to see before you even knew you wanted to see it. And you'd raise your wrist and you'd see exactly what you wanted. And it might be the weather, or it might be the music app, or it might be stocks, or, when the sun is setting. And in general, in my experience with that face, at least, it didn't get it right for me that often. And there was no way to dismiss any of the cards if they weren't right. And I just didn't really, I mean, I didn't like the design either. I didn't want to use it as my main watch face. I guess I liked the design, but I didn't want it, on my wrist all the time. And this new Smart Stack thing, I really think they took all of the good ideas from the Siri watch face and have basically perfected it. And, I mean, certainly there's nits to pick, but in general, it now only exists under whatever watch face you actually want to use. So you're no longer required to give up everything else about the Apple Watch face experience in order to get this kind of elevated utility of this interface. So it's now just underneath your watch face at all times, really easy to get to. And the stack now is customizable. So you can pin the widgets that you actually want to always be at the top, and you can tap and hold. And you pin them by tapping and holding on the Smart Stack. And that interface also lets you, it shows a little minus button, and you can delete widgets that you don't want to be in the interface at all. And this is...
Yeah, because there is a limit. I mean, I whatever it is, I hit it, and it said, you're going to have to delete one of these. And so I deleted the Cupertino one.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Excellent. Well, and so, I mean, that's so perfect, because it used to be that these random things like the sun setting in Cupertino would show up on the Siri watch face, and you're just like, well, I guess this is what lives here now. And, there was no way to say, okay, go away. Obviously you could scroll the list, but the next time you raise your wrist, it's going to be back at the top again. So this is a way better way to deal with that. It also, I think the limit helps to get rid of the problem of there just being so many card options that could go in this interface, that just how can Apple's machine learning possibly know what I want to see when I want to see it? There's too many options. And now, since there's a limited number of things that can show up and you can control those things, at the very least, you can set this interface to only have content that you might want to see. And then if there's anything that you definitely always want at the top, you can pin it. So I mean, it's still only been, I've only been on this for a couple weeks, I think. And it's still, pretty early in the beta cycle. So we'll see how it all works as things progress. But I think they've set themselves up really well for this to be just a way more useful interface all the time, like consistently, than the Siri face was. And I think that was always the final nail in the coffin of that Siri watch face, was its inconsistency. And if, every time I raised my wrist and it didn't have the information that I wanted, and I would scroll and it maybe wasn't there still. And then it's just like, well, this is just inconsistent. And after a while of something not being consistently useful, you stop using it. And, you get rid of that face and you don't look at it again. You don't think about it again. And that's kind of what Apple did too. It seemed they didn't, that came out, I want to say in watchOS 4, like 5 or 6 years ago, probably. And they never touched the Siri face since. And I always thought that there were some great ideas there that then they maybe could have iterated on, but they didn't. And then now in watchOS 10, it turns out they were aware. They've been thinking about this for a long time too. And they've done some really, really nice work here to bring this out. And I really think this is going to change the way that people use their Apple Watch in a really positive way, and start, making the Apple Watch have greater utility on a daily basis. This is also really similar to the glances feature that was in watchOS 3, where it was like, oh yeah, you just glance at your watch and there's a little piece of data that you wanted and you have quick access to, and then you're done and you're back off of your Apple Watch. And that's always in all of my watchOS reviews. That's the type of interaction that I've been kind of advocating for, is these super quick interactions. You don't want to be in a full app doing a bunch of stuff on your watch. You're just going to take out your phone if you need to do more than check some data, maybe like pause what's playing, change the volume, super easy, simple things like that. You might want to do on your wrist if they're really fast, but otherwise you're just going to leave your wrist. And this seems like they took the idea of glances, they took the idea of the Siri watch face, and they put all of it in a way that you can use it really easily on the watch, but you don't have to get rid of the utility and the fun of the Apple Watch faces in order to use this. Just, yeah, all around great work here. I'm really excited to see how this progresses and how third-party apps start using it. Yeah, man, I'm excited.
Yeah, I've got a few widgets from third parties already, and they're really nice. I mean, I think that they shouldn't. I mean, it's easy for me to say that things are easy for developers because I have no sense for that at all. But they are kind of very similar in size and shape to the large widgets on watch faces. So there's probably some ability to design around that, I would hope. But there's also, there's a widget that has 3 complications in it, which is kind of a neat idea. I have mine's showing music, workouts, and messages, which are probably based on frequency of use, because those are 3 apps that I actually go into more than most.
I think that's just what everyone gets at first, because that's what mine has defaulted to
Oh,
as well.
all right. Well, maybe that's true for a lot of people, but those are 3 of the ones that I use the most, especially the first 2. And then at the very bottom of the list is all apps. So if you kind of go through your widgets and don't see what you want or what you need, you can immediately go to the brand new Honeycomb grid, which is kind of interesting to me because it's the same old Honeycomb grid, but instead of having the option to kind of pan around up and down, left and right, because it's a big blob, a big circle of circles, it's just a strip that you can navigate by spinning the crown, which I actually think is a really big improvement.
Oh yeah, it's way, way better this way. I'm really impressed with this too. It seems like they found a much more elegant solution to deal with the way that interface was so hard to navigate, because you didn't even know what direction to go in to find the app that you were looking for.
There were too many choices.
Yeah, exactly. So if it wasn't like right there around, the center, then it's like, okay, well, is it up, down, left, right, diagonal? I have no idea where to scroll this interface. And you could only see like 5 or so at a time. So it just felt like just so frustrating to deal with. And this new way of there's only one axis, it's up or down, and you scroll the digital crown to traverse it. If something's way at the bottom, it still might be a little hard to find, but that all you have to do is scroll the digital crown, and you're going to get there pretty quick, because there's, they're moving way faster since there's so many on the screen at once. It's a lot faster than the list view. And you can customize to put all the apps that you use at the top. And then as you go down, you can, use the jiggle mode and place apps that you sometimes use a little lower, and you can actually do that. And obviously you could do that in the Honeycomb too, but I still, every time I went to the full Honeycomb version in old watchOSs, even when I took the time to set up my apps in concentric circles of usedness, I still, every time I went back to it, was like, well, okay, but which side of the concentric circle is it on? It still never helped me. So that actually now feels like a feasible thing to do, which is really, really nice. I think they solved the biggest problem with that interface. The only thing left is if you don't know what the app's icon is, then you still are not going to be able to find it. But that's just how
Although you still have the option for the list view, don't you?
Yep. Yeah, the list view definitely still exists. I think you used to be able to tap and hold to switch between list and Honeycomb, and that is no longer the case from what I can see. Because the list view now, if you tap and hold, it also has a jiggle mode. But it's just to delete apps. You can't reorganize them. So actually, I just found it. It's at the very bottom. So if you tap and hold to go into jiggle mode and then scroll down to the very bottom, you can switch view types. So that's nice. So you can switch between them if you can't figure out the icon.
Well, let me tell you what I don't like about the widget mode. I don't like the design of the date and time at the top.
Agreed.
Because basically when you first activate the widget mode, the top half of the screen is dominated by the abbreviation for the day, the month, and the date. And then on the right, there is a digital, well, I guess it depends whether you have an analog face or a digital face, but mine's digital. So it's showing a digital clock and then it has a circle around the edge, and the seconds tick off as you go as the minute advances. Now, I suppose that maybe can come in handy sometimes if you're wanting to see exactly when a minute is about to change, but I actually don't really like that circle, nor do I like how much space this is taking up. I mean, I guess I kind of get it. Maybe they're just trying to ease you into these widgets, but I think that, I don't know. I think it's kind of an uninspired design at the top there.
Yeah, I totally agree. What annoys me kind of the most about it is that it's set automatically. So the design of analog or digital for the clock that shows up is based on which watch face that you're using. And I like the design of most of the analog watch faces better, but I'm not very good at reading the analog time, if I'm being honest. I can do it, but it takes a little bit of concentration. So I usually just actually add like a digital time widget somewhere that I get off of WatchSmith. And then I can, still get my just super quick glance, know what time it is, but still get the design that I want on my watch face, which has always worked pretty well for me. But then when I, scroll up to this interface, because I have an analog watch face, it shows me an analog clock. And these analog clocks, it's a super simple one, so it doesn't even have the numerals around. And it's just like unparsable to me. I'm like, it's going to take way too much work for me to work out what the time is on this thing.
Well, I am not going to judge you about that, but I will warn you that Federico has said something similar in the past and been very harshly judged in some corners of the internet. So I'm going to tell people right now, leave Alex alone, because you know what? A lot of people don't like having to read the time with an analog clock. It is harder, and digital is superior. That's my view. So if you want to tell me I'm wrong, you can get in touch with me, because I'm really used to dealing with people flaming me on the internet. It's something Teachy taught me. So, all right. Do you have any last things you want to tell me about watchOS 10 before we move on to Sonoma?
I don't think there's too much. The last thing that I went off on in my preview was that I still think Control Center is taking up way too valuable of real estate. I don't know why it's attached to the side button. Control Center doesn't need a hardware button. I think that's just not right. I strongly believe that hardware button should have been turned into an action button like they have on the Apple Watch Ultra. Let everybody get that super cool functionality where you can customize what that button does, and just put Control Center somewhere else. What I have thought of is just doing it the same way it is on iOS, where if you swipe down from the right, it's Control Center. If you swipe down from the left side of the watch face, it's notifications. And, honestly, I've never loved that interaction on iOS either, but everyone is used to it. It's been there for many years now, and I think it would be fine. It would keep notifications in Control Center available, but I just don't use Control Center that much. I can't imagine who does. Even if you use it like a couple times a week, it still shouldn't be an entire button dedicated to it. I think a button should be dedicated to something that you use daily. I think they still have Control Center in the wrong place. I want them to move it. I want that action button I want that side button to be an action button. And, Ultra users will like it too, because they'll get two customizable buttons. So that's what I really think they should do. But, we'll see. For now, Control Center's on the side button. It's still that's the other thing I said, is if they brought the now playing screen back to the top of Control Center, then maybe I would think it deserves that button real estate more, just because there would be at least something that I do commonly, or that I would like to do commonly, that would be attached to it. But we'll see. And then the other thing that they got rid of is you can't swipe from the side to switch watch faces anymore.
Right.
And now swiping from the side does nothing. And I've argued for a few years on App Stories episodes, when I talk about my wish list for watchOS, I want them to let me put an app on either side and be able to swipe to the side and have an actual watchOS app show up and be able to customize which one goes on either side and just swipe into those. I think that would be really cool. And especially now that they've just removed that functionality entirely, I think, come on, give us some good stuff over there. Give us some options. So we'll see where it goes. But overall, really, really nice changes in watchOS. And we didn't even get into like the system-wide app redesigns, but those are all really good too. And stay tuned for the watchOS review later this year, and we'll be I'll be talking about all of it.
Sounds good. Well, I think they removed that swiping between watch faces because Apple's decided they've got something for that, and we just don't know what it is yet. And that Alex will be staying up very late the night before his review is going to be published, writing about it, because they'll announce it and they'll say, and we're going to put it out in 2 days. So that's what's going to happen, Alex.
Don't
I'm sorry.
Me, John.
I'm sorry.
Do me like this?
I know. I'm sorry to say. The last critique I will leave people with before I switch over to Sonoma is that they didn't change the action button on the Ultra at all in watchOS 10, which is super disappointing because it is a handy feature, but it's too limited in what you can customize it for. So that's my critique. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Concepts. Sketch, explore, and share endless ideas with Concepts Infinite Canvas for iPad. Concepts has been designed for creators of all types. The app is ideal for visual thinking, note-taking, drawing, and professional design. Concepts lets you interact with and edit your sketches too, helping you think and draw smarter. Everything that you draw in the app is a vector, so you can move, edit, and organize your sketches after you draw them using natural gestures. Sketch freely with liquid pens, markers, and brushes using designer Copic colors, or create mood boards with images, PDFs, and objects, then draw right on top of them. Design with tools like grids, snap, and real-world measurements to create professional projects. And connect your device to any display for instant whiteboarding with its built-in presentation mode. Concepts is used by designers and illustrators at Apple, Disney, PlayStation, Unity, and other companies globally to sketch, design, and communicate visually. Concepts comes free as a basic sketching app with the ability to unlock features via a subscription or one-time purchase. To learn more about Concepts, go to their website at concepts.app. Plus, if you go to the link in the show notes, you'll get a 90-day free trial of Concepts Pro. So check it out today. Again, that URL to learn more is concepts.app. And the link to the 90-day free trial will be in the show notes. Our thanks to Concepts for their support of the show. All right, Alex, I want to talk to you a little bit about macOS Sonoma, which I think by and large, from what I've seen so far, of course, no judgments until the review is out and I've seen all the betas, but I am pretty happy with the changes made this year. It's a much smaller, more compact, focused release this year than in recent years, and that's okay because a lot of the big heavy lifting has been done to kind of move macOS kind of more in line with the iPhone and the iPad, which I understand a lot of people hate. I've already heard from the people who I knew I would hear from when I said I really like the new lock screen. And they said, oh, but it looks like an iPad and that's terrible. I was like, no, that's actually a good thing. But that's a matter of personal opinion and everybody's entitled to theirs. I want to start with, is it safe to install macOS Sonoma? And the answer is, I think, yes, but. And the but is, don't install it and not have a plan B, for goodness sake. I mean, have a backup, have a second Mac, whatever it is that, you have a fallback plan before you actually install this. And like for me, that's having an M1 MacBook Air sitting right here. I'm recording on it because you know what? The Rogue Amoeba apps don't work on Sonoma. And so I can't use my Mac Studio for that. But that's okay because I have a plan B. So don't do it unless you have a plan B. But if you have a plan B, I'm going to continue to beat a special drum, Alex, which is a lot of people say, oh, I would never move to a new version of macOS until it's at least 0.2 or 0.3. And I understand that for some certain kinds of people who are working on things like there may be developers and developer tools aren't brought along as quickly, and you got to make sure that it all works fine. If you're a normal person like me, I mean, normal, not exactly, but if you're just a regular person, I'll put myself in that category. I don't think you have to worry about that too much. I don't think that this is any more or less safe than an iPhone beta or an iPad beta or a watchOS beta for that matter. So don't worry about it. If you got a plan B, go for it. Enjoy the summer of poking around inside Sonoma. Some people just don't like bugs either, Alex, which, I mean, I actually kind of enjoy running into bugs. It's like a weird thing. I've kind of had to learn to enjoy it because I'm on a beta like 99% of the year. And it's an opportunity to understand how the underlying system works as you imagine what might have gone wrong to cause what you're faced with.
Yeah. Oh man, we got Feisty John today. I love it.
We do. All right, so let's dig into some features. I want to talk about interactive desktop widgets. And if you see my screenshots were done in a very particular way with lots and lots of widgets on them because I thought, you know what? People need to get used to this. And if they're going to see a big crowd of widgets on somebody's desktop, they might as well see it on mine first before they download this update and do it themselves because it might shock them. It's actually really good, I think, because when you have an active window, by default, they fade away. They don't go away, but they fade to become translucent, show the colors of your wallpaper behind it. If you have a window open of any size, they're basically going to be obscured and hidden anyway. If you have a smaller window, yeah, you'll see them. And actually, I feel like that's a good thing because what I used to do is I would flip between tons of apps all day long. I'd open up Parcel and see when my package was coming, and I'd move over to music and do something with music, or that I'd go and check the battery, or I'd go to my calendar and see what's coming up next, or I'd run over to Timery and start a new timer. I don't have to do a lot of that anymore because I have those things that I use a lot. They're right there on the desktop. And it also got a lot out of my menu bar. For instance, I always like knowing kind of like what the temperature is outside. I had that in my menu bar before. I've taken it out of the menu bar because I can have a nice little small widget in the corner of my desktop and check the temperature there and the weather conditions. So that's pretty cool. And when you have no window on your screen or you click on the desktop, the widgets become full color, just like you would see them when they were back hidden in the notification center last year with Ventura and with prior updates. You know, they're full color now, and you can see them right there on your desktop. Kind of nice, I think. There's a new way to pick them. There's a new picker. When you hit Edit Widgets, it pulls up a new UI that slides up from the bottom of the screen and allows you to do search or browse some suggestions and pick which ones you want. And yeah, I think they look really neat. And to me, really, this is a bigger deal than interactivity. I think interactivity is a really big deal, especially on iOS and iPadOS, where we haven't had that before. We already had widgets on our home screens. But with the Mac, widgets were so hidden before, I just didn't use them at all. And now I actually have a place where I can use them and get some benefit from them. And not only that, but yes, I can interact with them too. You know, I've been doing things like turning my lights on and off, starting Timery timers because that's in beta right now. I've been running shortcuts, all that kind of stuff, which is pretty cool. And if you are concerned about having a cluttered desktop, what it does is it's very interesting. You can drag these widgets out and put them wherever you want. But if there's another widget nearby, you can snap everything to a grid. A little outline shows up, and it keeps everything kind of uniform in terms of the spacing between the widgets, which is really good. And so I like that as well. So that's kind of my pitch for widgets. You know, I should mention too, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but your iPhone widgets work on here too. It's all part of continuity, so that as long as you're on the same Wi-Fi network or your phone is nearby, you can put the widgets on your desktop and they'll update. So for instance, if you have a Current Weather widget, which is the one I used as an example in the article, you can put that right on your Mac desktop. Even if you don't have Current Weather for Mac, it'll show up and it will update almost in real time with your iPhone. So that's pretty cool.
That's really nice. Is that the kind of thing where developers can say they're not going to support that and then their widgets won't show up? Or since it's continuity, does it not matter and it's just any widget that's on your iPhone will also be available on the Mac? Do you know?
Well, I suspect that they just show up no matter what because all of these widgets are already showing up even for things that I'm not on betas of. So I think it's just kind of the default behavior.
Nice.
And I'm actually seeing, for instance, I think there's going to have to be some sort of opt-out only because I am seeing, for instance, Parcel has a widget for its Mac app and for the iPhone app that are both showing up in my new library. And the Mac one is better because if I click on the iPhone one, it will say, if you want more information, continue on your iPhone. Whereas if I'm in the Mac one, it'll actually open up the Mac app and go to my particular delivery. So there are some subtle differences there. And some of this is beta period, so I'm not really sure how it's going to ultimately shake out. But by and large, I really like it.
Got it. What's the deal with icons on your desktop? How do they interact with widgets?
So the way that works is if you put a widget, if you have a bunch of folders or files on your desktop and you drag a widget onto them, they will reorganize, they will flow around it. So it's reminds me a little bit of when you do the jiggle mode on an iPhone or iPad and you're moving icons around and everything kind of gets out of the way. It's not as janky as the way that works on the iPhone or the iPad. Yeah. It's not like doing things you don't want it to. But for instance, I've got my desktop organized in stacks because I kind of like that keeps things neat and tidy, even if I drop a lot on my desktop. But they're still there. If I click on the desktop and if I move a widget over there, they'll just flow around it. So it doesn't really get in the way. And I think stacks is a really good thing to use with this because then, I'm just not a person who wants to see like 100 icons on my desktop ever. And if you don't use stacks, I haven't explored yet what that is going to look like because I that to me is just chaos and I don't want that much chaos in my life. Instead, with stacks, it's like totally fine because there's a lot of room if you have a big enough display to put these widgets on. And so I haven't found a lack of space to be an issue at all.
Nice.
I will also mention a little tidbit here that there is not currently a music widget on macOS. There hasn't been one ever, but one is supposedly coming, Apple says, later this year. There's a lot of stuff with music that is coming later this year. I have a feeling that we may be in for that music rewrite that I've been hoping for a long time, but that it's not going to be in the fall releases, that it might be like a 16.3 thing for iOS and iPadOS. Okay. I don't know. We'll see. Not 16, 17.3. In any event, there are other new widgets. There's Home, Contacts, Safari, and Books, all of which are brand new, and an improved podcast widget that allows you to play and pause your shows as you listen to them, which it's nice. Not going to use it. Don't listen to podcasts on my Mac. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Fitbod. When you want to change your fitness level, it can be hard to know where to start. That's why I'm pleased to let you know about Fitbod, an easy and affordable way to build a fitness plan that's just for you. Everyone's fitness path is different, which is why Fitbod uses data to make sure that they customize things exactly to suit your needs. By using a powerful algorithm to learn about you, your goals, and your training ability, Fitbod will create a custom, dynamic program based on your experience and any equipment you have. This is an app that makes it incredibly easy to learn how to perform each exercise. Superior results are achieved when a workout program is tailored to your unique body, experience, environment, and goals. Muscles improve when worked in concert with entire muscular systems, so overworking some muscles while underworking others can negatively impact results. That's why Fitbod tracks muscle fatigue and recovery to design a well-balanced workout routine. By mixing up muscle groups, exercise sets, reps, and weight over time, Fitbod serves to increase your overall strength and keep your body sharp. This also keeps your gym sessions fresh and fun by mixing up your workouts with each exercise. The Fitbod app is easy to use and has over 1,400 HD video tutorials shot from multiple angles to make sure learning each exercise is a breeze. You can keep track of your achievements and personal bests with Fitbod's progress tracking charts too. And it also integrates with your Apple Watch, Wear OS smartwatch, and apps like Strava, Fitbit, and Apple Health. I think the thing about the Fitbod app that I like the most are those tutorials, those videos. There's 1,400 of them, and because they're from multiple angles, you really do get a good sense of exactly how to do an exercise. That's really important because if you do an exercise wrong, oftentimes you can hurt yourself and you don't want to do that. The app also has an incredible variety of things and mixes things up as you go through your workout plan so it doesn't ever get stale or boring. Personalized fitness training of this quality can be expensive, but Fitbod is only $12.99 per month or $79.99 per year. But you can get 25% off your membership by signing up at fitbod.me/appstories today. So go now and get your customized fitness plan at fitbod.me/appstories. Once again, to get that 25% off your membership, go to fitbod.me/appstories. Our thanks to Fitbod for their support of the show. So, I want to talk about just one more topic for today. And then I think I am going to save the rest of this for maybe when Federico's back on, or maybe later this summer. We'll see. I've got some Safari things to talk about and notes and other things. But I really want to talk about reminders because it was really weird to me that Apple basically didn't talk about reminders hardly at all in the WWDC keynote or on their product pages. It really just is practically getting a footnote. And it's like, oh yeah, there's this other stuff. Well, the other stuff is pretty cool because you get a new kind of list that's brand new and its own thing called groceries. And so when you set up a new list, you'll be asked, you can make it a task list, just kind of the standard list, or you can make it a groceries list. And the groceries lists have automatic categorization of food items that you add to it. More than just food items too, because you can do things like add paper towels and it'll show up in household items. So what you do is you start adding things. You add carrots and celery and it shows up under produce. You add, coffee and it shows up under beverages. And you add maybe something like eggs and butter and it'll show up under a dairy, eggs, and plant proteins section. There's a whole bunch of different sections here and it's all automatic, which is nice because then when you go off to the grocery store, assuming that your grocery store is organized kind of the way they typically are in a lot of places, then you will do less backtracking as you move around the store because all of your produce items will be in one part of the list and all of your frozen foods will be in another. And you're not going to have to kind of like scan down this really long list if you're buying a lot of stuff to make sure you got everything that's in that part of the store before you move to another section of the store. Just a really nice touch there that I think a lot of people will appreciate when they use grocery lists. As an aside, I had to test this and warn my wife because I said, I'm going to add a bunch of things to the grocery list. We don't need these things. I'm going to delete them. Don't worry. Because I actually had to do this twice. And the first time she said, are you asking? She was at work and she said, do you want me to get all these things when I come home? I was like, no. I'm just doing some testing. So
I wish you'd come back from WWDC and your wife had just stocked your fridge full of stuff.
Right. And it was all very random stuff. That's why I think she was super confused. But because I was trying to create a bunch of different categories. The other thing, though, that it kind of flows from this grocery thing, which is you can create sections inside of regular task lists now. So I think a good example for me personally that I think conveys how this works is that I have a project, I guess Apple calls them lists, called podcasts. And in there, I have all sorts of stuff that I have to do for App Stories and for Mac Stories Unwind. And with this new feature, what I did was I added two sections. One's called App Stories and the other is called Mac Stories Unwind. And it's a really small thing, but it breaks up what would otherwise be a very long list. And now I have 4 or 5 things to do in each one of those instead of one long list of like 10 things to do. And it just makes it easier to parse the list as you're reading it and organize things without having to create a bunch of extra lists that you would put in that sidebar, because that gets cluttered and full very quickly if you make a lot of lists. So I guess that's sections. Oh, the other thing about these sections, Alex, is that this is the basis of probably, I think a lot of people consider this the coolest version of reminders, which is there's a new view called column view. And so you can basically create Kanban boards here by creating a bunch of sections in a list and hitting the column list view, you will switch to lists that are in columns of all those sections. So for instance, to test this out, I created a OS Summer Series list for the summer series of articles and podcasts we do at Mac Stories. And you're in this list, by the way, Alex, and you didn't even know this, but there's a column called Not Started, Research, Writing, Editing, Published, and then Others. And I put in here all the articles that you and I and Federico are doing, plus the special App Stories podcast episodes, like this one that we're doing. And you can move them from Not Started to each of the columns as they progress, or check them off. So it's kind of a nice way to do something like that, or just an alternative view if you just want to see your sections that way. The Others is a kind of a default section where if you create a task and throw it in that list and it hasn't been assigned to a section, it goes into Others, which is fine and works well. I do wish that this view is available in the automatically created scheduled list that Apple makes by default for you. It doesn't do that, because what I'd really like to be able to do is move things, from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday really easily, but that doesn't exist right now. So hopefully I don't know. I think they'll get to that eventually. I would hope.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. I mean, what I do for that now, just for a top tip for people, at least on the Mac, well, it works on the iPad pretty well too, because you can open multiple windows, but you just open up multiple windows. And so you get to the end of the day, you had a very rough day and you've got stuff left over and you're just not going to do it. You can open up the today list, you can open up the scheduled list, and then you can just drag stuff to new days. That's basically what I do. So it's similar but different.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on that thing. I think I feel like that's one of the main things that we use Notion for. So we could potentially move some of our stuff into reminders and see how that works. We'll see. Obviously, Notion does a lot more, but it's cool to see that Apple's getting into these kind of more complicated use case areas where potentially we could start using their apps.
Yeah, no, I think it is good. I think what's neat about reminders is that it scales very well from something super simple like a grocery list on up to a more complex project like that. And while I think there's probably things that we will want to continue using Notion for, I do think that we could break some of our, like team projects up into components and throw them in sections of a list and, do some assignments between each of us for who's responsible for things and have them in various lists and maybe do some sort of Kanban type of view. It's got potential. I haven't really used it a lot yet, other than this one shared list with Federico that was more of an experiment than a real list. I've kind of tracking the summer series on my own anyway, but I think a lot of people will like it.
Yep, for sure.
All right, Alex. Well, thank you for coming and joining me today. We will have Federico back next week, but it's good to have you here as always. I want to thank our sponsors again for this episode. That is Concepts and Fitbod. You can find the two of us at macstories.net. Alex hasn't been writing as much lately, although that watchOS 10 thing, that's a big thing. That was a big writing assignment right there, but he's been busy on other projects. But you can find me there pretty much every week, writing away. And you can find us on Mastodon by going to johnvoorhees.macstories.net or alex.macstories.net. You'll find follow buttons there. We're also on Instagram and Threads now. You can find Alex by going to AJ Guyot, and you can find me where I am at John Voorhees. That's JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you later, Alex.
Talk to you later, John.